Hi, I'm Amy Ellis. Welcome back to Finishing Your Quilts on a Home Sewing Machine. I am excited to show you a few more quilting designs that you can incorporate into your quilts. And the first one here is a geometric all-over pattern that can be a lot of fun. So this one does not follow any of the handwriting tips that I mentioned before. So it's something you're just gonna have to practice and get more comfortable with. But I thought I'd show you how I draw it first, so that you can practice with a sketch pad or a whiteboard at home. I usually start on the left because I'm a left to right girl. If it makes more sense for you to drop in from the top, that totally works, or you can work right to left. So, but this is how I stitch it. I'm gonna start here at the top and come over and down and just kind of work around. And you can go all the way back up. You can go down in the next direction. You can go up, over, and you can cross over and come back. So there's lots of options with this one. You can fill in the space as you stitch. You can see my squares aren't exactly square, and that's okay. It gives it a little more individuality, right? It's not perfect, but that's okay. So, and just keep stitching and turning, and you can go in and back out of the same square if you want, if that feels comfortable to you. And you'll notice I kind of stopped with each corner, and we'll do that when we stitch too. So it's something that's good to get in the habit of when you're sketching it. It's just kind of take a pause when you get to that corner to make sure that you actually have a corner. And you can see some of my corners here, let me find one, aren't as pointy as some of the other ones. And some of them aren't perfectly square, and that's perfectly fine. So let's move to the machine and I'll show you how I stitch it. I'm gonna start kind of on the side here and pull up my bobbin thread. Same things apply. Don't want that nest underneath your quilt top. And we're gonna go ahead and just stitch over to get started. So I'm pausing at the corners to get that precise point. It takes time to practice that and get it down, so don't beat yourself up if the first few times you stitch it doesn't work out. I run out of bobbin, and I actually did that on purpose so I could show you how to stop and start. And I'm just gonna clip my thread here, and you can see I stitched about an inch more after I ran out of bobbin. And sometimes you can hear the difference. Some of your machines might have an indicator that tell you that your bobbin's low. So just watch for it, and sometimes I'll get a whole row stitched and then realize that I ran out of bobbin, but hopefully that doesn't happen to you too often. It just kind of goes with the territory sometimes. So I'm gonna move back under here, and what I'm gonna do is start at this point where I was most recently, and I'm gonna go ahead and pull up the bobbin thread right there. Let's see, try that again. And once I get the bobbin thread up, I'll take a couple of stitches to lock it on the top there, and then continue on with the stitching. So let's get that in, and then I'll go up, just like I had been planning on doing. And then I'll clip all the threads so that they're out of my way. So because I came back and started before I had run out of thread, I'm locking all the stitches that I took after that point before there was the thread loss. So then we can just keep going. So that works whether you're doing these squares or you're doing any other free motion quilting. Just give yourself a little bit of room to switch your bobbin, and then make sure your stitches are nice and locked up. So I am just trying to be square in how I move the fabric. And some of these patterns are going to come more natural to you than others. And I encourage you to go with the one that feels the best to you. If something is just really not working, but another one feels good, go with that one and get that one down and build your confidence with your quilting in that way. And then if you really want to come back and figure out, how to make the other design work that wasn't really working that well for you before, then you can, practice it. But you want to have success somewhere before you get frustrated and just throw in the towel. So with this one, I move across the fabric, and then I'll decide I'm going down and just push the fabric down and make a square that way. So, and it works left to right or right to left. If you're really not comfortable going in the opposite direction, you can stop and cut your thread and move back to the left side or the right side, wherever is best for you, and then continue on and just do a row at a time. So don't let that be a hindrance to you. But this one's a lot of fun. I like how it fills the area and it still leaves the quilt top nice and soft so that it's got lots of snuggle factor, but it's still pretty densely quilted as well, and it really fills in the space. So just keep working it and keep looking at where you're going versus where you are right now to make sure that you're not stitching over in the same area too much. It's fun to overlap them, but you don't want to have too much of it overlapping either. And if you need to stop and adjust your bulk, make sure you do that with your hands moving after the needle has stopped completely. So there we go. Let's look at that. We have the whole piece quilted, and we could just continue on in the same vein. If you had a larger area to quilt, you could keep going and get your whole piece covered. So I like that one a lot. It's fun, and it's not too difficult to get the hang of. If you're having a hard time with some of the curves, that one is good for the more straight lines and can be more intuitive for some of you. So give it a whirl, see what you think. Let's see what we have next. We have some swirls. And some of these are going to be easier than others. And this one, it can be fun. It's a good one to fill in the space as well. And you can do them large or small, depending on the space that you have. So, and I like to kind of count when I'm quilting these ones, because I want to make sure I go in far enough and then out back in the same way. So again, I'll start at the left, and you need to make sure you have enough room to come back out. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And just, you can see I did to 2 on that one, and it's just not quite the same. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's kind of like a dance. And once you get the hang of it, it fills in the space really well. So, but again, this is one that really does take some practice to get the motion. And you're going to want to stop when you get to the center of the point, like we did with the squares too, because that helps to define that point. And you can see it in the quilting here too that I've already done. The points or the center is more pointed. So let's move to the machine and get this one stitched out. There's, with this one you can go back and forth as many times as you want, and you could go big or small. So I'll show you a little bit of both, just so that you can get an idea of what it looks like. I tend to start in the corners. If you're working on a larger piece, I would look at the quilt in quadrants. And when you stop for switching a bobbin or a drink of water for yourself, just to stretch, pull the quilt off at the same time so that you can look at the overall piece and get a feel for where you've already quilted and where you need to go in the larger scheme of things. When you're focused on the area around the needle, you can get bunched up a little bit. So it helps to kind of step back and look at it a little bit with a little bit of distance and make sure that you're getting enough of the quilt quilted. So the main thing with this, you need to make sure that you have enough space when you go in to come back out. And some of them are going to be better than others, especially if you're going smaller, it can be a little bit trickier. So let's see, I keep doing little ones, let's do a bigger one. And it comes with practice. Did you notice I kind of stopped there in the center for a minute? Or not a minute, for a couple of stitches. And just let the machine rest for a second there, but the needle is still moving so that you get that nice point. And you can work your way around and then come back out. And depending on the size of your swirls, you can really fill up the space pretty quickly with this one. So it's a good one to practice and get confidence in growing that one. There's lots of options with this too. So some people will follow the line. You could also cross over the line like this. Gives it more of a flower type look. You can just go in and then go out and do the next one. It's really up to you and what feels good to you. So don't be afraid to try something that looks a little bit different, because if it feels good for what you're working on, then that's all that really matters. So there's no right or wrong, just what works for you and your machine. Sometimes that can be a big factor as well. So, and I've had my speed set like at a medium fast, and as you gain more experience, you'll learn what works best for your machine and for you. Sometimes you need to circle back out. So, there's always something more to figure out as you're stitching. Another thing you could do with these loops is really spiral in a lot and then come out. It's kind of like a cinnamon roll. So I like to aim for roughly the same size, and then just continue working that way. Sometimes it can help to draw the size that you want to make and keep it nearby as a reference. That way, if you get off track, you can go back and look at that again. So let's look at that. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different swirls on here, and hopefully you saw how I stitched those all out. Some of them are stitched all the way into the circle. Other ones we just did a spiral and then moved on to the next one. So it's up to you and what feels good to you in that case. And like I said, there's no right or wrong, just what feels good and is gonna get your quilt quilted. So experiment, see what you like and what feels right. And then just try and do more of it and get bigger and bigger in your projects. So this next one is a little bit smaller. I think of it like as a clamshell or a paisley. You can see they just kind of nest in and around each other. And I'm going to show you how I draw them and then stitch them as well. So these can be a little tricky. It's a little bit more advanced, but once you get the motion down, it goes pretty easily. And it's kind of like a letter C or a raindrop. It depends on how you're looking at it. So I like to stitch and I go back in the same way. So they move and they nest together like that. And sometimes I find that I need to go back somewhere and fill in a little bit better, and that's okay. And you can travel if you need to on the stitches that you've already made. And see here, I didn't make it all the way back, but I'm just stopping where the seam was already sewn. And then you just continue on. So again, these can be smaller or bigger. Kind of reminds me of like a droopy tree sometimes. Their leaves are just kind of every which way, but they're all nested together. And then just continue on. This can be a lot of fun for filling in a background of an area that you want to quilt but don't need to draw a lot of attention to. And you can go in both directions. So if one way feels more comfortable, try that, but then you can also try in the other direction. And it's just up to you and what feels the best there. And just keep going. So there's a little bit of a stop there to get the point, and then the next loop. So, and then we'll just travel out to end over there. But you can see how I kind of looped around up and down to fill in the space. And that's pretty much how I work when I'm at the machine too. So let's look at that on the machine. Put my gloves back on. This one can take a little more time to work on and practice. So if you're frustrated at first, just maybe try a different one that feels better, or try making it bigger or smaller, depending on how your stitches are looking. So don't get discouraged, but I like it for filling in on the backs or behind some more technical piecing. It's a lot of fun. Making those teardrop shapes, and you want to bounce back and forth a little bit to make sure that you're getting the right motion. And be careful with your speed. Make sure that you're not going too fast with your hands. Sometimes, like right here, I need to get out of that corner, so I'll just go back and do another lap round on that drop. So, and you can make them a wider drop if that is the look that you like, or the skinnier drop. It really just depends on what you're looking for in your quilting. Always something different that you can figure out and make it your own and make it unique. So if yours don't look exactly like mine, that's great. Just keep stitching. So I'm going to turn this and keep working around. And you'll notice if you start where you end where you started. So if you want to end on one side, you need to turn in one direction. And if you want to, make sure that you get to where you need to go, it can help to think about where you're headed and go in that direction. So if I want to go this way, I'm going to make my loop go to that side. That way, when I'm done, I'm over on that side. Make sense? I hope so. So this is a lot of fun, and again, just takes some practice to get the motions down. And then you can work in and out of as tight of a space as you would like to. So if it's a smaller space, you can really shrink your size and do a smaller portion like that. But a lot of times I'm looking to fill something pretty quickly, so I like to do the bigger ones, and they're a little bit easier. The stitch length can be a little bit tricky on the smaller pieces. Kind of reminds me of an algae that we used to have growing up in the Pacific Northwest that would be like kind of leafy and then have a bulb. Just think of something that, you know, the shapes remind you of, and it can help you to have that shape in mind and make sure you get a consistent look. This one takes a little bit longer, but the results are really fun, and the texture is yummy. So it's definitely worth the effort. And it's really fun because you can just turn it however you need to go. The machine's getting noisier, it seems. Sure. Yep, we're good. If you're having trouble with this shape, work on drawing it and getting comfortable with the motion in your hand first. It can help your brain to be able to recognize it easier when you're at the machine. There's lots of little movements in there where it doesn't necessarily feel natural at first, and that's okay. And after you've been stitching for a while, you want to make sure to clean from underneath your bobbin case, and also switch your needle to make sure that you have no thread breaking or tension troubles with the lint underneath. There's always a lot more lint when you're quilting than when you're just stitching. For a piece in a quilt. Sorry, I'm trying to concentrate and talk at the same time. It's a little more challenging. But so I like to, when I'm quilting, put some music on. It can help me to get in the rhythm of the motion that I'm making repetitively. Just put something on that you enjoy and is fun. Something else is like a podcast or something interesting, a book on tape even. That way your mind can focus but still be engaged in something more. And sometimes you can learn something too. So, it's always fun. But there's just about there. Take a look. There we go. So you can see where I got really small here in the middle, and you can see the nice round smooth shapes that I made for most of them. So that can be a lot of fun, and I really just encourage you to try it and see how it works for you. And if you like it and want to continue to practice it, then it's a great one to know and to be able to fill in your quilting. So let's look at one more. This one, it's like a wood grain. It feels really organic and kind of random, which is good. That's what you want. So this is a good larger overall, especially when you add in these tree knots. It's kind of how I think of them. And I put together a bigger piece, but let's draw it out first so you can see. This one I really do count with because it helps to make sure I have enough of the pieces in, or enough rounds in to be able to make a nice shape. So I'll start with just a few wavy lines just to give it a little starting point. And these can all be the same, or they can be, you know, opposite of each other. Sometimes that helps. They can overlap, whatever feels fun and good to you. So, and then to make the knot design here, we'll do a bigger open, and then I like to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you just reverse that and go back out. And you continue on in your line across the page. So, should I show you that once more? I'll just do one more, just so that you can see it once more. So we do a line, and we kind of make it a little bit of a hill there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. And they don't all have to be the same. That's the beauty of this organic design, is it can be a little bit different. But so it's kind of like a swirl, but I'm stopping to make a point kind of at each of those spots to give it a little more definition. So I'll show you how I stitch it. I have a bigger piece here so that there's room for the design. And for this one, a lot of them I work left to right. This one I like to push the fabric through. So let me show you. It looks a little bit different, but it might feel more comfortable to you in the other direction, and that's totally fine. But this is what works best for me. And I also meant to mention that sometimes turning your machine so that it's perpendicular to you instead of parallel can open up the field of vision for you and give you more room to work. It just depends on how your machine is set up. So think about that. You might try it if it's feeling a little cramped for you, but beside the machine as you're quilting, it can help to open things up a little bit. So get that tucked under there. I'm going to start by doing just a couple of lines, and then I'll add the tree knot in a minute. I need to move this piece out of the way a little bit. Here we go. That's something that's really kind of crucial when you're quilting, is to make sure that you have an open tabletop so that your quilt has room to move. And I'm getting these lines pretty organic just without even trying, because I've been kind of switching it up a little bit too much. But so I'll do another line here. You can start 1/2 inch to 1 inch apart depending on how tight you want your quilting to be. Just depends. But there's lots of room for creativity with that. And like I said, for me it helps to kind of walk it through this way. Stop and move your hands so that you don't have a big hiccup when you're quilting. So you'll find that well, a lot of times my lines will end up looking rather similar. So I try to think of a different way to go for every few lines. And so sometimes I'll start right where I started the time before, just so that I have a different starting point. My stitches were already knotted, so I just clip the thread. It's instead of trying to untwist it. So we have our few lines here of stitching. And then in the next one, I'll go ahead and add that knot. And let's go back at the beginning. This one I really like to start and end at the same side. That way if I have any shifting as I stitch, it all shifts in the same direction. So sometimes going back and forth can be helpful with that, but for me, I've found that if it's all shifting in the same direction, I get less puckers, and I'm just generally happier with the results. So let's go ahead and add in one of those swirls. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And work right back out in the same way you came in. And then we'll continue on. And you might have a bit of open space around those knots, and that's okay. You can, if you really want to, you can come back and fill it in with a little more stitching, or you can just let it be the organic feel that it's kind of meant to have. So it's up to you. I've gone back a few times and kind of filled in around here with just another line of stitching through here. So it can work either way. So next we'll do a couple more lines of stitching, and then we'll add another knot in another spot in a minute. There we go. And again, I would be using a thread that really blends in well, so that this is adding texture but not necessarily color. And that will help your designs to, even if they don't look perfect, to just give the right amount of texture that you're looking for. So don't let my red thread scare you from trying this one. It's a lot of fun, and it can be pretty quick too. It's just a lot of stop and starting. So let's see, we'll go again with one more straight one, and then we'll add the knot in the next one. You might find with this one that you need to turn your speed up so that as you're walking your quilt down or walking your needle down your quilt, you get a nice even stitch. Because it is so simple, these first few lines, it can be helpful to go ahead and make it faster, but I don't want to make it too noisy for you. So let's go ahead and add in the next knot. So I'm going to go down quite a ways so that I'm doing it in a spot that's kind of opposite of where the other one is. I don't want to add too much of the detail all in the same place. So here we go, this was good. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll just circle back out. That is really that one is pretty simple. It's just a matter of getting those swirls down. And like I said, counting has really helped me to make sure that I have the right number of pieces going in and out of that. So that's the wood grain quilting design, and I hope that you really like it. It's a really fun one to stitch out. The organic lines just add a lot of texture and depth to your quilting, and it's not super stressful. So I encourage you to try it out. There are worksheets available, so if you want to look closer at how I've stitched these, the lines that I drew in the worksheets are just how I've been stitching this whole class. So take a closer look at those. You can also just rewind the whole thing and look closer at the lesson for some specifics that you may have missed. So feel free to look again and take a closer look at some of those different ideas. Your assignment this time is to obviously practice. Find one or two of the designs that really speak to you, that you're comfortable with, that you really like to stitch. It helps when you like what you're sewing, right? So find that one and go ahead and practice it and get really comfortable and confident with it. And then look through your quilt tops and find one that can be quilted with that design and get it basted and ready to quilt, and just go for it, tackle it. So remember, if you're working on a larger piece, to go ahead and roll instead of fold, so that you're not adding folds to your quilt top as you work underneath the machine arm. And then also remember to take breaks and relax. I tend to get too bunched up and tight, so make sure that you're relaxing in between rows or passes on your quilt. And also, I just want to say thank you for joining me for finishing your quilts on your home sewing machine. I'm Amy Ellis, and it's been a lot of fun to quilt with you.